Welcome to Combat Learning. I'm your host, Josh Peacock, skill learning specialist for martial arts and a fifth dan in Taekwondo. Head on over to combatlearning.com for more martial arts teaching content. Now, if you're excited to jump in, hit the subscribe button on your podcatcher and enjoy the show. All right, welcome back to the Combat Learning Podcast. Today I have Andre, and you're the head coach of the Grappling Garden. Is that correct?
Grappling Garden. That's correct. Yeah. That's
Awesome.
my gym. We're in Hamilton, Ontario, just outside of Toronto, up in Canada. And I'm the head coach and the owner.
Cool. Did you found it? Like you're one of the founders, or did you kind of stumble into that later? Or
That's right. I founded it in 2014. We had a different gym name back then. And then after the pandemic, we rebranded.
awesome. So what goes into, I like the name, the Grappling Garden. What went into that rename?
So during the pandemic, I lost the space that I had. I had a space in a smaller town just outside of Hamilton, and I lost it, and because of the pandemic. And I really questioned if I wanted to do this. I was feeling pretty frustrated, and up until the pandemic, I was enjoying the business less and less. Like the busier the business got, the less I was enjoying it.
Yeah.
And so I questioned whether I was going to continue. And I had a lot of soul searching and thought about it, and had 2 years to think about it. And I finally landed on that, yes, I want to do this. But if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it my way, not how it's supposed to be done or should be done or has been done, but I'm going to do it my way. And one of those ways was I wanted to fill it with plants. I'm a hippie at heart. And so I filled it with tropical plants, and it's one of my passions is taking care of those plants. And at one point, there was a local grappler who comes and visits our club sometimes, and he was like, "Oh, it's like the Grappling Garden in here." And I'm like, man, that's it. So I stole that and ran with it.
That's awesome, dude. I thought it sounded like Skills Garden, which is something that I think Stuart Armstrong, he's one of these ecological guys, talked about. I didn't know if it was influenced by that or not, but the real story is actually kind of cooler than that.
Yeah. If you're ever up in Canada, come and visit. It's a really cool space. It's like an old industrial red brick building. And then we've got tons of tropical plants in there. So it's a cool contrast.
That's awesome. I'm sure the oxygen in there is fantastic.
Yeah.
Excellent. So if I understand, you've shifted to like a constraints-led approach. Is that accurate too?
Yeah. About 2 years ago, maybe a little bit more.
2 years? Awesome. So you spent quite a bit of time not teaching that way when the previous version of the business. What led you to transition into a constraints-led approach?
There's a number of things along the way. The first was, being, like I said, a bit of a hippie at heart. Someone I listened to and was Timothy Leary. He was one of the leading researchers in the 60s psychedelic research. And then they all got, in essence, canceled and fired from their research positions. And he went on to lead a counterculture movement. But one of his quotes was, "Think for yourself, question authority." So I came across that as a teenager, and it's been kind of a foundational idea for me. Think for yourself, question authority. And then, prior to the pandemic and through the pandemic, I started to find myself skipping training when it was specifically set up for drilling. Like, it'd be like, "Hey, do you want to meet and drill for an hour?" I'd be like, "Yeah." And then I'd come up with a reason not to. And then I'd go to a practice where I could grab a blue belt or a purple belt who was pretty good, and I could try things live. And it was way more interesting and way more fun to me. And, the last kind of push over the edge for me was one of the fighters I was coaching at Niagara Top Team up here, Kevin Popowick, he said, "Hey, have you heard of ecological dynamics? It's this thing where you learn skills by playing games." And he sent me some videos of Greg Souders. And the moment I saw the video, I was like, this makes total sense. Give me more. I need to dive in and I need to explore this and adapt it and adopt it. And so we didn't really look back from there.
Yeah. Whoop, my mic's falling down. So was there any, you said that there's like an immediate, that made sense to you immediately. That's, I know there's people like that out there, but most of the people I've come across were very reticent. They either immediately eschewed it, right? And it was a process before they came back around and actually even tried it. And then some people were uncertain about it, but they gave it a try. And they kind of, as they were in the process, started to realize how powerful it was. So for you, maybe do you think your background helped lead you to that? Like just like looking at it, being like, yeah, this is totally it.
Yes, I think my previous experiences and my frustration with myself as a competitor, like I was doing the things we were told to do and I was doing them at a high level and I was competing with a lot of very accomplished grapplers and I was still struggling. And the common thing you'd hear is like, well, you're not drilling enough or you're missing this
Mm.
detail. And I'm like, I heard the details. I'm doing the detail 1,000
Yep.
times. And I'm still, facing these guys that are beating me. We're doing the same thing. So what's going on? So it started with that frustration. And I think, Greg's a controversial figure. I think in that way, it's actually good. I think it's brought a lot of eyes and ears to this. But he's so knowledgeable. Like I can take a 5 or a 10 minute segment of a conversation he's having, and I can take notes, and then I can create like a 10-page document on those notes. So listening to him talk as well, I kind of tuned in right away to the level of knowledge that he has, and the information he was sharing was of a high quality, and I didn't really um, didn't really question that the methods were effective.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is this is an ongoing frustration. It was there long before you came across the ecological approach. So between the point where you discovered the ecological approach and when you kind of realized, hey, there's a disconnect between what I'm being told about drilling and all these little technical details. What was the story you were telling in your head for why that disparity was there?
Prior to finding ecological approach.
Yeah, I'm interested to know
Mm.
that. Yeah.
So prior, what was I telling myself about the frustrations and the disparity that I was experiencing?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure. I don't think I had an answer or an explanation to it. I think I was just
Mm.
searching, um,
Yeah.
and it didn't make sense to me until I came across this idea of skill acquisition through constraint led approach or ecological dynamics. One moment that stood out to me as well, and you're just having me remember this, is I went to I spent a little bit of time with Hobson Mora. Do you know the name Hobson Mora? Like he's like a,
Yeah, he had a famous video beating up a real big guy. He didn't really beat him up. He was really nice, but
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So he was like, one of the great grapplers from a decade or more ago.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I was watching him train, and he wasn't doing the 5-step things that we're supposed to be doing. He was
Mm.
way outside the box, but
Mm.
making everything work. Everything was working for him. And I thought that's fascinating. I hadn't come across ecological dynamics yet, but I was watching Hobson Mora and I thought he's at a level of understanding where there is no box. So he's not constrained to you have to do it this way and then this way and then this way. He was just grappling That was another pivotal moment for me, was seeing that level of mastery. What's interesting though is that these people all they did all drill. Like Hobson Mura drilled. He drilled a lot. I'm not sure if he continued drilling. And I'm interested in the conversation too about how do these people who have followed this traditional model achieved so much? And is it because they drill, therefore they have intention going into matches, and it's really the intention in the matches that is meaningful? I'm not sure if you've thought about that at all.
Yeah, my understanding is that all of these athletes train immensely more than most of us do. Um, and so they also get immensely more sparring, rolling practice, and positional.
Mm-hmm.
And all the top guys do positional too. So like there is an account for it in my mind. It would be interesting to confirm it through like an empirical study, but I'm not even sure how you would do that. I mean, I guess there is a way to do it, but um, yeah, I think it's that. I think there's an element of personal connection to grappling too. Like there are individual constraints that just click well with certain sport modalities. And that's not to say that if you don't click immediately, you can't get good at grappling. Of course you can. But I think there's people that get ahead, which is one of the reasons why they don't quit. And then there's like a psychological aspect of high performers. They just have unique personalities that the general population doesn't, which is another reason why they don't just quit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, we have to be careful because it has been studied that really, really elite level performers, they'll be asked questions about what they did in the middle of a key performance, and they don't really know what they did
Mm-hmm.
because there's so much going on that the memory is not very clear. And we know that some narratives that are given to them by their coaches often fill the gaps. So they will attribute their success to probably to basically, in my opinion, arbitrary things. Like, yeah, I put in the work, I
Mm-hmm.
did the drills, I tackled the dummy. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like I did the stuff. They're gonna attribute it to the stuff they didn't want to do
Yeah.
because the narrative is I worked hard.
Yeah.
Now the rolling, the drilling, the live football practice, all the different parallels for the ecological type of training, all that stuff is hard. It's hard work, but it's more fun. It's the stuff that we want to do. And I just think the narrative is that if you're doing the stuff you don't want to do, then that's what led to the victory.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just a bias. It's not, there's no way to actually prove that. It's not a methodology of training to understand what works. That's what I think about it. Is there additional clarity of intent or attention going into roles when you drill a certain way? Maybe. I don't know. I mean, it's got to be individual because it didn't work for me,
Mm-hmm.
um, or it very rarely worked for me personally. And I think a lot of other people, including yourself, felt that disparity. I know that before I discovered the ecological approach, the narrative I had in my head was I just sucked and I was weak, and I was weak, but like I needed to lift and stuff. But like I was too small. I was very small. I was like 140. I was weak. I had shoulder problems from an injury. So there's just all these things. My coach didn't care about any of that stuff. Like he should have been telling me to lift. He should have been more mindful of my injuries and stuff. In martial arts coaches, not just jujitsu people, they're just this way. They think they know better than the athlete. They don't know
Mm-hmm.
what the athlete's feeling, but they can tell the athlete what he should feel
Mm-hmm.
or she should feel. And yeah, it's just frustrating. Like if I weren't a martial artist in the marrow of my bones, I would have quit. I mean, easily. It's so easy to see why people quit before blue belt. Like it's not a mystery.
Mm-hmm. There
Go
was
ahead. I'm
there
interested in
was
what you have to say about that.
yeah, there's a couple of things that came to mind, but regarding the coaches, I was listening to a podcast. It was either Coach Your Brains Out. Are you familiar with that one?
That
It's
sounds so familiar.
it's a volleyball podcast, but it's all
Yeah.
CLA and equal. It was
Uh-huh.
that one, or it was might have been yours. I don't know, but they were discussing the role of a coach and how a coach is one of the most can be one of the most impactful person in an athlete's life, and yet there isn't a demand or an expectation of the coach to have a certain level of accreditation or education or information or knowledge, or to be continuing to search for more knowledge. And I think that's a real shame. I think the coach you described wasn't athlete centered. And I think coaches need to be athlete centered first. Like you said, we shouldn't assume anything about the athletes. We should be in dialogue with the athletes and trying to understand what each individual needs. Every athlete is very unique. The other thing I thought of when you were speaking, that idea of I just suck. At the old gym, when we were following that traditional model of warm up, drill, positional, a couple of rounds, I would look around the room and I'd think, well, there's a lot of people in here that just suck, and they're gonna suck. And as long as they're having fun and they're connecting with the community and they're getting in shape, that's good enough. Now, when I look around the room, everyone's good. I was watching last night in my foundations class, my beginner class, and there's these two women. They maybe have 3 weeks to 8 weeks of experience. They look they looked great hand fighting on the feet. They were in great position, great stance, moving their feet well, taking angles, beating elbows, like clearing hands to get close to the legs. And on the ground, they looked just as skillful. And I think that's one of the biggest observations I've had in switching the methods of how we coach is like everyone looks skillful,
Yeah.
as opposed to the old way where there was a lot of people that just sucked. And I would think they're just
Hmm.
going to suck now.
Yeah, it feeds into itself. I think I've written about this before, but I've never written anything on it, like just a piece on just that topic, which I probably should. There's this idea that I've heard, and when I or in the early days of pushing the ecological approach, I'm an outsider. I'm a blue belt. It's like, if you don't have a black belt, nobody wants to listen to you at all. I'm not a competitor.
Yeah,
I
you
do
never
it
won a
for
world
exercise.
championship, so what do you know, right?
Yeah, right, right. I haven't won ADCC,
Yeah.
however many times you have to. It's always shifting, right? It's just get one, and then you get one. It's like, well, but so and so has two, so and so has
Yeah.
three, right? It's like it never the goals never stop shifting. But yeah, like I'm an out, it's whatever. So it was difficult for a number of reasons. It's a foreign. I mean, the concepts themselves are foreign enough that that's hard. But then also you have this Taekwondo nerd guy who's a hobbyist trying to tell you. But it's I hear and Reddit is so bad. Like our BJJ is so bad at this. It's almost a part of the social contract to talk about how bad you are. And so you have like people that wear they have t-shirts that say crappler or
Mm.
something like that. And I just think it's so for some people that are actually good. First of all, it's just disingenuous. It's a false humility. And for people that are just struggling to get better, it's it just beats them down. And I think that's why they get the blue belt blues and they quit because it's just so hard. And the reality is almost everyone is drastically better innately at grappling, but you wouldn't know it because the way we teach artificially suppresses the good parts of your instinct. We
Hmm.
spend our entire lives reaching and grabbing and manipulating objects. Our entire lives. It's a basic skill to be a human being if you have hands. And so but there's this idea that when you start jujitsu, all of your instincts are wrong, all
Mm-hmm.
of them, and you have to rewrite your instincts. And I just don't think that's true. There certainly needs to be calibrated. You can't stiff arm somebody from bottom mount indefinitely without getting an arm bar. But there's ways to do even that. I mean, if you stiff arm the hips, there's a powerful escape from there, right? So like a lot of these rules, they just don't. They're kind of uncareful and they don't hold in. Um, they create an artificial structure around which we think that humans they can't do any of that stuff. They don't understand any of that stuff implicitly. But when you put them in games, all of a sudden, a few minutes in, they're doing stuff that you wouldn't expect them to do. And some people think that that's learning, but it's too quick for it to be learning. Learning's like is a semi-permanent change due to practice, and it happens over a longer time scale than one session or even two sessions. Maybe 3 weeks, probably there's some learning taking place there, I'm sure. But one or two sessions, not really. And what's happening there is that's actually what Schmidt's not ecological, by the way. Schmidt calls this motor adaptations. Motor adaptations are your innate ability to adapt your behavior to a novel context. And so when you see this immediate jump, it's impossible that it's learning. That's innate.
Mm.
Everyone, this is so powerful. Everyone is better at grappling than you think. And it's just a massive blue pill lie, right? It's you're in the matrix to think that people can't do things unless you tell them.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, and I think that's
yeah,
hugely like disempowering to
yeah,
to lord over a technique and say you
mm,
don't know how to, and you have to come to me. Whereas I think that this method is hugely empowering. Like just having people think for themselves, having people problem solve without your immediate input. Have you understood the problem yet? Okay, go back and come back to me when you really understand the problem. What are they doing to you? How are they stopping you? When you understand that, we can talk. That's so empowering. That's like a model of learning and living and thinking that you can take off the mats.
real quick. If you're wondering why your training doesn't quite get you or your students the results you want, it's probably because you don't know about a concept called transfer of learning. Transfer of learning, or simply transfer, is the science of designing practice in a way that is most likely to show up in performance. Go to combatlearning.com and sign up for my zero cost newsletter, and I'll send you my transfer cheat sheet that gives you quick tips on how to supercharge your drills and exercises so that what you train for shows up in sparring and competition. Head on over to combatlearning.com now and sign up. Now back to the episode. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I know that some people along the same lines, I had friends years ago, I mean, a decade ago now, they were doing jujitsu, and it's all the same. It's all the same talk. Like if you want to stay in, you have to tell yourself these stories. And so this guy, he has this coach, and he's like a hard ass, and he's only a brown belt though. That's the funny thing, right? He's not even a black belt. It's like this. So the story. So it's like why he talks about this guy is such a hard ass for technique. It's got to be
Mm.
perfect,
Mm-hmm.
and he's glaring at me when I'm not doing it right. And I'm like, well, if he's so good, why is he not a black belt yet? What has he been doing? 7, 8 years now, and he's not a black belt. If he's so good, why hasn't he won anything other than a local tournament, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so
I
back then, I'm like, yeah, this guy sounds like a character. But I didn't think anything of it. Later, I'm thinking back, and I was like, this dude has such an inflated ego that
mm-hmm.
he emanates this vibe to all of his people, and it's like part of the. It's like, oh, that's Coach so and so. That's the way he is. And like, he expects perfection. I was like, oh yeah, well he's not even. What do you mean he expects perfection? He's not even a black belt yet. He hasn't even finished the colored belt hierarchy, and it's just so wild. I mean, and not a single one of those people train anymore. Not a single one of them.
course. That sounds like a horrible environment and not fun. And like, we're doing this for fun. You know, we joined jujitsu because we want to learn how to fight or defend ourselves primarily,
Mm.
right? Most people, I want to learn how to fight or I need to defend myself. And then fun and community and fitness are like secondary to that, but very important. So that environment is completely lacking in fun or community, it sounds like.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I think those are essential. And that also that idea of perfection and technique um, goes against another idea in psychology of being focused on process versus outcome or having a growth mindset. If you see things as black and white, as good and bad, that's a heavy outcome focus. And what I really appreciate about the constraints led approach to coaching and learning is the embrace of failure and adversity and problems and struggle. You know, expose yourself to as many problems as you can, fall on your
Yeah,
face as many times as you can so that you have a lot of opportunities to reflect. Why didn't that work? What could I adjust? What will I adjust? What am I going to go and try next? So that's a big, we kind of tie that into as well to our coaching is this constant conversation about focusing on process versus outcome. And I think it complements it really nicely. And I think people need to hear it because a lot of people, maybe from, I don't know, maybe from our schooling system, do think in that way of good and bad, right and wrong, and black and white. Um, and I feel like one of my roles as a coach is to get them out of that mindset and into the mindset of go and try and fail and then adapt, and try again. And maybe you'll fail again and that's good. So let's try to adapt again.
absolutely. Yeah, it's in self-determination theory, the process orientation is essential to maintaining internal motivation or intrinsic motivation. And one of the ways that you, as a coach or a parent or anyone in a sort of structural authority position, that you can help foster that is to praise a person for engaging in the process rather than for the quality of the outcome.
Yes.
That's praise the process, right? That's the you can boil everything down to that, and not according to the outcomes, because when things are outcome dependent, you know, really tumultuous for anyone of any age, but especially children, to go into any sort of competition or test knowing that an accident that adversely affects their performance could adversely affect their relationship with an authority figure or with a friend or somebody like that. So it shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't be
Mm-hmm.
that way. I mean, there's some expectations like just constant failure over years and years. Maybe it's due to something that's defective in the learner, but probably not. Like most people are not trying to fail like continuously, right? They are trying to, and then when they continue to fail, then their motivation tanks, right? And then they don't understand. It's like you get into a learned helplessness state
Mm.
because you don't understand what actually is a leading indicator to performing better. You just
Do you
know
th-
that you keep having these bad performance outcomes.
do you think that would be mitigated if they had a coach
Would poor
that
performance
learned
outcomes?
no the learned helplessness? Like, do you think the
Learn.
role of a coach is to
Oh yeah,
prevent that from happening, to be
yeah,
there to keep them on the path?
yes. When you start a new activity, things are uncertain. Um, you don't have your bearings, so it can take a while to get your bearings. And even when you start to get your bearings, learners are not experts in the learning process. And so coaches, if you want to be a good teacher, you need to know something about learning.
Mm.
And you can set those expectations. And the expectations can't be it's going to be awful for 3 years and then it'll be fun. Because that's what I heard. That's what I heard when I first got into jiu-jitsu. Everybody was nice. The instructors were very detailed and they were patient and everything. But everybody tells you, including the students, yeah, it's going to be really bad for 6 weeks, and then you're going to get the fitness is going to start to kick in, but then you're just going to get crushed and crushed and crushed and crushed and crushed. Um, and it just doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be that way at all. I mean, everyone can get reps in any kind of position through the games. They don't have to spend 6 months fighting to that position uh, through constraining their own sparring, which is the old way of doing it. And if you never learned that habit, then you never got good at it, right? It's the blue belts and the purple belts that started to guide their own practice during sparring that start to get good at things.
Mm-hmm.
And you weren't always told this. People didn't always tell you this. So if you didn't have the wherewithal to notice that this is what these people were doing, you would never have got that practice habit. It's a mystery of getting good in the old way of doing things. So like you know when you have people on YouTube kind of demystifying things, these sort of things. It was very helpful because there was a market for it, because there's hundreds of people that didn't realize that you needed to do that at some point because their instructors were not telling them to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Their instructors wanted them to listen to them. So I feel like I'm kind of rambling, but yeah, the praise the process. That's really key. You want them to engage in the process. You want them to enjoy the process. And
Mm-hmm.
there's too much of Olympic level mindset trickling its way down into everyday exercise, fun, engagement type martial arts. If somebody raises their hand and you see that they're performing well and they have an interest in going higher, by all means, snap them up, right? Put them in a competition class. But you should not be talking to a person that's there to lose weight, feel safer, and have fun. You should not be talking to them with like these rules of enjoying it 30% of the time, being ambivalent 30% of the time, hating it, like just like these weird high performance things that people talk about. I shouldn't say they're weird, but these things that they should never bother their brains with that stuff. Don't put that in their mind, because you want them to have fun. They should have fun just about every time they show up, even when they're losing. And I think the aliveness and the individuality usually covers that. Usually it's fun to do even when you're not doing so well in class. It is for me anyways. What are
Yeah,
you seeing on your mat?
we have a pretty we have a large student base, and we have a lot of high level performers, and we also have a lot of recreational athletes. So
Yeah.
we've had to kind of figure out how to juggle that, and we've done a good job. We definitely partner people. We select a lot of partners for people if we need to, but they kind of self-organize too, and find the best partners for them. But one thing we've been implementing, which works really well, is we'll further constrain the more experienced athlete. So, for example, basic off balancing game. If the task of the bottom player is to off balance the top player to their hands or their butt, we may constrain the bottom player, if they're more experienced, to say you must do that from any position where both of your feet are inside of their knees. Or you must do it 3 times in a row in a completely different way each time. Whereas the less experienced athlete, if they're with a more experienced athlete, will have a simpler task. You simply have to X, Y, and Z. And that seems to work well. And it kind of bridges the skill gap, and it allows the more experienced athlete to still grow and learn and adapt and experience problems against a lesser skilled athlete. And then it lets the lesser skilled athlete have more time exploring and feeling against someone who's better than them, and also having some successes. Like one of our top grapplers in the room, Charlie Jang. He's right now he's ranked number one in ADCC Canada rankings. And I was just telling the practice yesterday, I'm like, I regularly see Charlie getting scored on, losing, and getting submitted by people of lesser skill. And it's because he understands the process of learning, and he understands the focus on process and not outcome, and he explores different problems, and he explores different solutions, and sometimes it costs him, and that's a good thing. So that's what we've noticed on our mats, and kind of how we deal with that disparity in skill between recreational athletes and competitive athletes.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It's interesting because, like I mentioned before, they tell you it's going to suck, you're going to lose, and it's just going to be that way for a couple of years unless you're a phenom. But that doesn't prepare you to understand that losing and making mistakes is an objectively integral part of learning. You
It
have to
has
do
to
it.
happen. Yeah.
And but what they're telling you is not that you have to make mistakes, it's that you're just going to make mistakes because you suck, and then eventually you'll make fewer mistakes. And so it's a
Right.
deficit model of coaching, is what Ian Renshaw calls it, where this is the standard, right? And this is the standard for normal guys. The elite players, they kind of fight their way up and they can kind of do whatever they want, and then we'll say, oh, they break the rules, but they're they're in this special category that you can't be in. Um, and so there's the deficit that it doesn't prepare you actually to make those mistakes on purpose, not make mistakes on purpose, but to try things that you're not comfortable doing, to find new and adaptive ways to deal with a problem. Uh, and that's something. If you listen, if you have an ear for it, you'll hear people like Gordon Ryan, and you'll hear other high level performers. They'll be like, "Yeah, I'll tap like 30 times in the course of 20 minutes because I'm just trying to push the needle of different ways of doing things, and how far can I let something go and still defend it? Just testing, 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 testing." Again, they don't tell you that when you start jujitsu. You either develop that habit, or somebody has the presence of mind to take you aside and let you in on that knowledge an aspect of your personal learning methodology. If you don't get it, um, you're never gonna get that good, because
I think this
you're trying to win every time. You're not trying anything new.
I think this is a problem, like a real problem. And I
Yeah,
think that it stems from the fact that a lot of coaches, I can't speak to other sports, and it may be the case in other sports and it may be not, or other martial arts, but in jiu-jitsu, someone loves jiu-jitsu, they get some level of skill in jiu-jitsu, perhaps they compete, and then they go, well, I want to make money doing this, I love it, I want to spread it, I'm going to open a gym. But at no point have I ever heard someone say, I'm going to develop myself as a coach. And I think that's missing and is very much needed. And I think it's one of the biggest benefits from this whole conversation, is like bringing guys like Rob Gray into the mix, and Ian Renshaw, and like these academics whose careers and study are all about skill development and coaching and relationship with athletes. And that's all coming into the mix through this conversation. I think that's essential. Because like I mentioned earlier, I think coaching can be a hugely important part in someone's life. Like picture that teen who comes in, that 12-year-old, that 14-year-old. You have an opportunity to completely change the course of this person's life for the better, if you can get them to stay. And like you've been saying, I think a big component of that is to get them to understand process, not outcome. Because it's hard. It's like you're not missing a basket. You're not missing a goal. You're getting strangled. You're getting slammed to the mat, strangled, and someone's sweat is dripping into your mouth. And then you're being
yeah,
encouraged to get up and do it again. Like that's one of the most uncomfortable things we can do. So it's so essential that this conversation about praising the process be brought into this. Otherwise, we're just going to keep losing people.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's in everybody's interest that your students continue to train. It's a business, there's a business interest, there's a social interest, there's a psychological interest. Um, I know because I work for a gym desk and we talk
Oh,
with
you work for Gym Desk?
gym. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
We used to use
You,
Gym Desk. I wonder if we
oh, you
ever
did?
communicated. Yeah.
No, probably not. I just did the
Okay.
marketing stuff, the content stuff. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. But I say that to say that we've talked to a lot of martial arts studio owners, dance studio, Pilates, yoga, gym, and most of them they don't start their studios to make money. Most of them are bivocational. They start it to transmit the art or to transmit the fitness, the sense for the passion for taking care of yourself. And uh, you know, instructors they do believe this, I think, but there's a real sense of cognitive dissonance where they really do want to transmit the art on one hand, but on the other hand, they have this sense of, oh, what are the students going to do to prove to me that I need to spend more time with them? Or they have a sense of, I did these things when I was training, and so everyone needs to go and do these things now. You have to put the reps in. You have to do the drilling. You have to do the dumb, unrelated stuff at the beginning of class with the butt kicks and the lemur going in circles and all that.
Yeah.
Just
Shrimps.
stupid stuff. Like
One of the biggest reactions I've ever gotten from someone who came from a traditional way of learning jiu-jitsu was around shrimping, of all things. It wasn't that we
yeah,
don't drill technique. I was like, we never shrimp. He's like, you don't shrimp? He like lost his mind. I was like, nope. And you see that person right there, they've been training a month and they can escape side control. Like we don't need to shrimp down the mat.
no, no. And the shrimp, the shrimp, the way it works is different when you're rolling than when you do
It's
it on the floor.
yeah, completely. It's not the
The
same thing.
biomechanics are different. It's like, how do you
Yeah.
learn how to shrimp? I was like, you don't learn how to shrimp when you do that.
So I have a question for you. Can I ask
Mm-hmm.
you a question?
Sure.
There's this, it seems more prevalent in jiu-jitsu than other sports talking about constraint-led approach and eco dynamics. And that's this idea of the warm-up. The warm-up being useful or useless. I think a warm-up is very useful. I think there is some research showing that a warm-up, like the physiological effects of a warm-up, reduce risk of injury. But in my observations, I think it preps people for practice. People are coming in from work, from school, from laying on the couch, and it shifts their attention to what we're doing. Now, that being said, I understand that a lot of the criticisms revolve around jumping jacks and shrimps, so we don't do that. But we also don't get right into jujitsu. Like we'll play dodgeball. We do a lot of partner strength tumbling activities because they're fun and they get people laughing. And I think that's really important personally, like to get people connected and laughing gets them ready to learn, gets them ready to practice. I went to Standard with Greg. They go right into the first game to warm up. I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah. My I agree with you because I don't, unfortunately, I wish I could teach full time right now, but I can't. Um I have a job, so when I go to train, I'm transitioning. I'm up to the like I do a lot for work, so I'm up to the last minute, and then I get throw everything on and head to train, right? And so it's really I if the warm up was the jumping Jackson stuff, I would be very tempted just to be late, right?
Yeah,
Because I just
yeah,
don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. I can program something better for myself in terms of calisthenics. Right? I do my own thing for that. I think it's just nice to do a mini game. I don't. It is like with the grounded games, it's not quite the same. But with the stand up, and a lot of instructors do like to start with the stand up. Man, that is brutal to step right on the mat, bow in, and just do a stand up
That's
game.
crazy. Yeah.
And maybe it includes a takedown. Like I just do a little hand fighting, right? Just a little moving around or something. And let the people let their bodies warm up, and they can start scaling up their own intensity at their own rate, right? Sort of negotiated with the partner. And then after that, that's where you do the games that are high intensity. There's lots of learning going on. Yeah, I think the smaller games, and a lot of them are not that representative, but who cares? It's sport specific, sort of. It's sport specific, and it's fun, and it's not as demanding. That's the key point.
I think there's something too to creating good movers.
Yeah.
Creating like dodgeball, for example, or variations of tag. Like those develop athletic traits and qualities that people may not be exposed to as much grappling on the ground or wrestling close to another person. And I think you could make a case that the more skillful a mover someone is in all ways, the better all around athlete and martial artist they'll be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
Like multi-sport kids, that's factual that kids who who are exposed to multi-sports growing up have less burnout, less risk of injury, and tend to be more successful athletes than kids who are hyper specialized. So I think we can bring that into adult practices too, and use that time at the beginning of class to build connections, have fun, transition out of work mode, and then expose ourselves to some different movements. But there's a fine line there, like you said. Like, no one really wants to come in and do 30 jumping jacks and 20 sit-ups and shrimps down the mat. So this is kind of an idea like floating around in my head right now, and I appreciate your insight, because I'd like to put it down on paper and get a little bit more clear as to what I think would make a good warm-up. What does it have to include?
Thanks for listening. Before you go, can you do me a huge favor? Positive reviews help the show get more listens. If you got value from this episode, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And don't forget to check out combatlearning.com for more resources on skill acquisition and coaching. See you on the next episode. This episode was produced by Micah Peacock, including the intro and outro music.